Hi everyone, this is Carrie with Side by Side Educational Consulting, where we work side by side with educators to improve outcomes for all kids. Today, what I want to talk to you about is active engagement. 5 ways to get kids more actively engaged. Before I give you those 5 ways, I want to just talk to you about why that is so important. So when you're thinking about a lesson and lesson planning, we have the content that we're always planning, what we want the kids to learn. But I want you to think about the fact that that's not the most critical piece. We have our content, but we've also got to think about how we're going to deliver that content, because the delivery, how we deliver it, is going to be really critical for how well students master the content. And I know we all want our kids to learn our content better. So let's think about that how and talk about those 5 ways to get kids actively engaged. The more engaged they are, the more content they're going to be learning. The first thing that I want to talk to you about is choral responses. So if we can get kids using more choral responses, that means getting everyone to answer all together. That means that more kids are going to be practicing, and that means that more kids are going to be then learning. So think about this. If you call on one student, that's the student that's doing the learning right then and there. However, if you had all students respond, everybody's doing the learning. For choral responses, I want you to think about signaling. In signaling, that just means in order to get kids to answer all together, so you don't have them all answering at different times with choral responses, it needs to be all together. You need to make sure to just give them a clear signal for when they need to respond. So it could be just that you have your hand up and say, think, and then, okay, everyone, have everybody respond. It could be a snap, whatever fits your teaching style, but it needs to be clear to the kids. The second thing I want to talk to you about in terms of active engagement is ThinkPairShare. ThinkPairShare is a great way to get all kids actively engaged, just like choral responses, but the difference with ThinkPairShare is instead of having all the kids respond at once, I'm going to have them all share with their partners first, and then we'll share out from there. So a few tips for that technique. First of all, make sure that you have kids partnered up effectively. There are some kids you know you don't want partnered together. So make sure you're the one that's assigning who they're partnered to and that it's a good matchup. You also can think about in terms of the learning, sometimes depending on the content of having maybe a student that's has mastered the content a little bit more to a student that needs a little bit more support, matching them up together, because then they can learn from one another, and that student that maybe has mastered the content a little bit more can be a teaching point for the other student. The second thing that I want you to think about is making sure that you assign them a role. So you can assign them 1s and 2s, for example. So one person in the partnership is a number 1, the other person in the partnership is number 2, or A's and B's. There's lots of ways to think about it. I've been in some primary classrooms where they have peanut butter and jelly. Whatever you want to call it, everyone knows their role and what they're supposed to do. And that way, I can control as the teacher how I'm having kids respond. Lots of times in that partnership, what's happening is one student is dominating the conversation. So we want to make sure that we're setting this up so there's an equal partnership here, and both kids are getting the practice. So I might ask a question and say, okay, I'm going to have 1s share first. 2s, be ready, because I'm going to be calling on students and you'll need to share what your partner shared out. So you're giving them, each of them, a role, something to do. Or I'm going to have 2 share out first this time. 1s, when they're finished, I'm going to have you add on 1 thing to their answer. Always give them each a role in what they're supposed to do. Make sure that you do a quick checkpoint, because if you don't, there's going to be kids that are not think pair sharing during that time. You want to make sure after you have them do that you do a quick check to make sure and call on some individuals to have them share out what they just shared with their partner so that they know that they're accountable for that. The third technique that I want to talk to you about today is ThinkPairWrite Share. So this is just a little twist on ThinkPairShare where we just add a short burst of writing in between. The kids are still going to do the thinking and share with their partner, but right after that, you're going to have them do that short burst of writing. It could be on a sticky note, it just could be on a scrap piece of paper, but then after they get it written down, you're going to call on individual students and have them share out what they've written down. The great thing about this is really twofold. One, you're having kids share out verbally, and doing an oral response with their partner before they write, and that can help them to process the information a little bit more before they have to write it down on paper. Also, if they're unsure, their partner can help them out with that. And then the writing is just taking it a little bit deeper, a little bit higher order task, having them write that out before they have to share out with the class. And then you'll just do random call out on 2 or 3 kids to share out what they've written down, just to keep them accountable to the learning that they just did. The fourth one that I want to talk to you about is talking chips. So talking chips works great within small groups. So if you have some cooperative learning groups set up in your classroom, this can be perfect for some of the discussion maybe that you want to be happening. Remember, even in those small group discussions, just like in ThinkPairShare, some kids might dominate the conversation. And we just want to equalize the playing field here and make sure that all students are getting a chance to discuss and learn the content. Remember, it's the practice opportunities that are important, and we want everyone to be practicing. So let's talk about what talking chips are. Talking chips are just a way to get all of the kids responding in a small group discussion. And I just have some example of some small little chips, markers here. You could use anything in the classroom. I've had kids use just tear 2 pieces of small pieces of paper, and those are their talking chips. So it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Or you could have something that they actually use, and they're going to tell everyone how many talking chips they have. So maybe I have a group of 4 kids. My kids in my classroom are all grouped in groups of 4, and I say to the group of 4, you each need to take 2 talking chips. So everyone takes their 2 talking chips. And then I say, okay, here's the question and here's the discussion. You need to make sure by the end of the discussion that every single person in the group has used 2 talking chips by the end. And then here's the key. Once you've used your last talking chip, you're done talking. The other people in the group have to have a chance to respond. So they can go in any order and add on to the discussion however they like, but they're only allowed to use 2 talking chips. The 5th active engagement technique that I want to talk to you about is whiteboards. So we've probably heard of whiteboards before, but it's just a great way to get everybody responding. It's really simple, and it's similar to choral responses, except instead of doing oral responses, we're going to do whiteboard responses and do it in writing. So we all know what whiteboards are, but I wanted to give you just a way to do whiteboards that maybe could be more cost effective if you don't have whiteboards already in your classroom. You can basically take a file folder, put a piece of white paper inside, and then laminate it. And that in itself is going to create a whiteboard, especially if you're using markers that just wipe off. And then from there, basically the kids have their whiteboard in front of them. You can ask a question, they open up their whiteboard, they're writing their answer, and then what's really great about this is that then they close their folder, which is covering up their answer, and then you're just kind of watching the class, watching the group. Again, everybody's doing the learning this way, and you could say, okay, 1, 2, 3, show me. And everyone's holding up their folders, 1, 2, 3, show me, and they drop their folder down. So not only did everyone get the practice, but while the folder and the answer is pointed to the teacher can do a quick glance around the room. It's a great formative assessment. Quick glance around the room and just determine, how did we do? Is this something that I need to reteach a little bit now? Or was everyone good to go and we're ready to move on to the next concept? So those are what I believe are the 5 best techniques for getting kids actively engaged, but just remember, there's lots out there, and I could talk lots more about many different techniques. If you want more information, I want you to know that I've got a handout with 20 different active engagement techniques on the website. Our website is sidebyside-consulting.com, and you also can attend any conferences or trainings that I might be doing. There's many times that I just do trainings around active engagement that might even be an entire day long. We talk about all different ways that you can get kids actively engaged. Thanks for listening. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, that really helps us out, and remember to check out our website, sidebyside-consulting.com. Thanks for listening.